Welcome, Adriana Baer, to the How Does She Do It podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here with you.
I'm excited to have you. And why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience in case they haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet?
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Adriana Baer. I am a public speaking coach that comes from a background in the arts. So I spent 20 years as a professional theater director. And now I work with people, not just in the arts, but in all sectors who are looking to increase their impact by showing up and speaking from who they are. And that
Ooh.
is my life.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh man, my blood is already flowing. I want to talk to you about all things related to what you did as a director. I want to talk to you about how you transitioned all of that knowledge into essentially being a coach.
Yeah. hmm
Interesting.
Yep. Coach, business owner, all the things.
Okay, before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about your family life and the wonderful complexities that you have in addition to your business.
Oh, I'm so glad to start there. It's always important, I think, to talk about like who we are, not just when we're talking about our businesses, because it's all related. So I live in the Pacific Northwest and I am married and I have a 7-year-old kiddo who's in second grade. Um, and I'm a daughter, I'm a mother, I'm a friend, I'm a sister. I've got lots of different hats. I was going to say lots of different identities, but I try to make sure that I'm always like grounded in who I am,
Hmm.
no matter which thing I'm talking about.
Right.
Um, so that's me. And we live on a couple of acres. We left the city life a few years ago, and bought a little piece of property. And I always say vegetables, not animals. So I do a lot of growing of vegetables and digging in the dirt, which really helps keep me balanced for sure.
Oh my gosh, you're living the dream. It's such a thing right now. In
Yeah.
my family too, we're always talking about doing a family compound and getting that plot of land and
hmm
my sister-in-law is like the teacher and the one that takes care of all the kids. And then, my brother-in-law is the gardener. And like, we're like,
Yeah.
man, we could totally do this. And you're
You could.
kind of doing
You
it.
could do it. Yeah. Yeah. Although I wish I had more community living there too. Because right now we're doing it mostly ourselves, but
Yeah.
hopefully if you build it, they will come kind of
Yeah.
situation.
I don't know. I feel like you're inviting me. Maybe I'll,
Come
maybe
on
I'll
over.
come. I don't
Come
know.
over. I love it.
That's cool. So, yeah, I'm just dying to know what got you into the arts in the first place? Because as you
hmm
know, my background is in acting and performance, more
hmm
for the screen than for the stage. But come on, we
Yeah.
share
It's
we
all the
share the
same
same
stuff.
blood. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What got you started?
Well, I kind of never wasn't interested in the arts. I was one of those kids who just did like dress up and ballet and acting and all the things, starting from the time I was really, really little. And
Like how
I
little? Like tell because
like
I have little kids, so I need to know
little
when is
kids.
too soon to put them in.
Well, I started dancing. Well, I have an arts background in my family. My sister was a professional. She's much older than me. She was a professional with San Francisco Ballet, and my dad was a
Mm.
producer and a conductor. And so I have all these people in my background. I started ballet classes when I was like two, just
Right. So
really
you
like
literally
jumping
were
around, in like little
never not in
tutu
the arts.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
basically never not.
born into the arts.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I thought I was going to be an actor and I did do a lot of acting. And then in high school, around junior year, I started, getting the opportunity to direct little things in class projects or whatever. And I started to realize that I was reading plays from the perspective of the audience and not from the perspective of the character I was most likely to play.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I would read a play and I think, about how it was being seen instead of how it was being played, right? So
Mm.
I started directing and got some opportunities to do kind of crazy things for my age. When my senior year of high school, I directed Spring Awakening, the play, not the musical, because the musical didn't exist yet.
Oh,
Um,
okay. But still
but the
heavy.
play, which
That's
was
heavy.
really heavy, which is much heavier even than the musical. And I just fell in love with directing. And so when I went to college, I continued that and that became my focus. And I decided really early on that I wanted to be the boss. I wanted to be an artistic director. And this kind of leads into the where I am now and having an impact. Yeah, all the things, right?
But don't skip ahead because I'm dying. I have to tell
I
you,
won't
like,
skip ahead.
oh my gosh, like Adriana, when COVID hit, I was in LA. I love Los Angeles. It was my dream city. I've always wanted to be in California, like small town
Mm-hmm.
girl from Kansas. I used to dream of being in Southern California, and I
Mm-hmm.
finally made it there when I was like 30. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And I'm there and I'm acting and it's awesome. And then when the pandemic came, I'll be honest, I was kind of looking for a break. You
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
the hustle
I
of an
do.
actor, it's not glamorous or glorious. You're doing survival jobs, you're spending
Mm-hmm.
more money than is even responsible on
Yes.
training, on headshots, on subscriptions, on and I
Yeah.
needed a little bit of a break anyway, because I was tired of being broke. And so I was already transitioning into entrepreneurship at the end of
Mm-hmm.
2019 anyway, right? But when 2020 hit and it shut down the industry,
Yeah.
it caused a lot of creatives to scramble.
Yes.
What
Mm-hmm.
was your experience?
Well, so backing up just slightly, um after college and then after grad school, eventually I did get hired as an artistic director. That's what brought me from New York to Portland.
Oh yes, don't
Um,
skip. Yes, okay, come on.
so
Give me the details.
so first I was in San Francisco. I was the associate artistic director of a theater there. Then I went to grad school in New York and Columbia. Then I did the freelance thing for a while,
Oh,
which like
slow down. Hold on. Woo, back up. Oh man. You did what? You went where?
so I have my MFA in directing from Columbia University,
Wow.
um, which was an amazing program that is still run by Anne Bogart and at the time Brian Kulick, who's this incredible brain for literature and language. And so I had 3 years of making messes, trying things, having them not work in a really safe environment. It was really great.
That's
Um,
incredible. It's a
and
very
then
prestigious school and program in general.
yeah, it was awesome. I was really lucky. And then um then I my joke is I started freelancing, which really means I was like a hostess at a fish restaurant in Midtown Manhattan, right? But during that time, I was like, well, okay, as I'm trying to build my freelance career and like work towards becoming an artistic director, I started my own coaching business at that time back in
Okay,
2010.
2010.
Yeah. And so but my focus was on actors. So I was doing audition coaching and helping actors get into graduate school. And I really niched down. And then a friend of mine who was in San Francisco, which is where I'm from, we decided to kind of build the business together. So she opened a San Francisco branch and I opened a New York branch. And really, it was small, but we were creating organizational structure for how to run a coaching practice together and working side by side, which I love. I love working with people. That's why
Yeah.
I'm a director,
Yeah.
So as that was starting to get off the ground, I actually did get hired as an artistic director at a theater in Portland. And that's what brought me out from New York to
Wow.
Portland. And so
Wow.
we paused the coaching practice because I didn't have time to do that anymore. And I went to artistic leadership. And I was in that position for 3.5 years. And I burned out really hard.
Mm.
Um, and, so this is sort of that like rock bottom, what am I going to do with my life
Yeah.
moment.
And let
And
me ask a
yeah.
clarifying question.
Mm,
So when you say you burned out,
hmm
are we talking about burnout in terms of being a creative director? Are we talking about burnout as it pertains to being a creative person, or like
yeah.
life was life and so hard it was
hmm
burnout on like a mental and emotional scale?
Yeah. So what what happened for me in that position was I took over from the founder of this company. And founder brain, I think, is a really interesting thing
Founder
because
brain.
founder brain, I call it. I think founder brain is fascinating because usually when you found something, you are like following creative impulses, right? Oh, this is really interesting to me. Let me go see about that. Okay, I'm going to put this thing and I'm going to build this thing. And then eventually you create this entity. And in my head, it looks like a tree, right? So there's a strong root, which is like your initial impulse, but then all the branches are just mixed all together without any kind of clear structure.
Sure.
Oftentimes, the second person, especially in a creative space, the second person, which in this case was me, their job is actually to come in and kind of sort through all this mess and
Detangle.
create structure,
Mm.
detangle. Yeah. So my role, which I didn't actually know until I got there, was really to go through this entity, this 15-year-old institution, and create systems, create structure, and kind of create a sustainable business
Mm.
model that was not reliant on one person who was this founder. That also meant a lot of fundraising, a lot of business management, a lot of stuff that used my left brain really a lot. And
Your less creative
yeah,
side is
right,
being really taxed and it's requiring a lot. And
right.
you're in a position where you probably had the expectation that you would be doing more creative
Yeah.
and
hmm
artistic
Yeah.
directing.
Yeah.
And instead you're building structures and systems and raising money and that type of
Right.
practical work.
Yeah. And there were some like pretty big crises that happened early on in my tenure there. Like we lost our space, the theater that we had been in. Um, the people who owned the building decided to turn it into a warehouse and kicked out all the arts organizations. It was horrible.
Man, arts are
So,
just
we had to find a new
mistreated.
space. Like this is the, yeah, yeah. So I remember one day, it was maybe it was the beginning of my third season. I was in rehearsal and I was directing a play by a playwright you probably know, Sarah Rule, who's like a beautiful, beautiful playwright. And it was my production. So I had all my people around me. I had my actors that I wanted, my stage manager that I loved, my assistant director I'd worked with for years. Like it was all things pointed towards great, right? I love the play. And we're in rehearsal and it's day 2. So as you know, at day 2, you're like, where's the door? Who am I talking to? You don't know anything, right? You don't know anything and you shouldn't know anything.
Right.
But it was this scene that was supposed to be funny. And I was sitting there in rehearsal and it wasn't funny. And my little brain did this. I was like, oh my God, this scene isn't funny. And if this scene isn't funny, then the play doesn't work. And if the play doesn't work, we don't sell tickets. And if we don't sell
Spiral.
tickets, we can't make payroll. And if we can't make payroll, then my friend, actually the same friend I had built that coaching business with, I had hired her and she had just had a baby. And I was like, if we can't make payroll, the baby doesn't have health insurance.
So you went from this isn't funny to the baby has no health insurance.
Correct. Correct. And it was in that moment that I went like, something needs to change because, and then I went down this pathway of, well, I'm really good at the business side. So maybe I should, I felt so torn. I felt so torn between the business and the fundraising side of things and the management side of things and the creative side of things. And at that time, it felt really hard to reconcile those two things, which I feel like I've
Mm.
now done. which is great.
Hmm.
But at the
Yes.
time, I was like, so I thought, well, maybe I should just quit the art side. I'll just do the business side, and then I won't feel so terrible all the time. And
Yeah.
then I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, my soul will die. So I might as well go work for a bank or something where I'll make a lot more money, you know?
Right.
So eventually, what I realized, and this was many months later, I realized that the company was getting stronger and stronger, but I personally was kind of getting weaker and weaker. Like my health was falling off,
Mm-hmm.
my my mental health was not great. I was sort of carrying a lot of this on my shoulders.
Yeah.
I also was really young when I got that job. I was 29 when I got the job. And I think I was really relying on my perfectionism and my workaholism to drive the success of this
Oh man.
organization.
This is like a theme of this show.
Yeah.
Such a theme. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to pause you there and I
Yeah.
want okay, so this idea of burnout. Before I
Yeah. Yeah.
asked you
Yeah.
like in what area are you burning out?
Mm-hmm.
And from what I'm gathering, your burnout started and just having your expectation not met. You're expecting to do creative work, you're doing something that's not really creative at all. You're doing it so
Mm-hmm.
much that it's taxing. Then when you
Mm-hmm.
get the chance to do the creative thing, the loudest voice in your head is shouting at you that you need to focus on the business as well. And so
Yes.
it really starts to then, the burnout starts to snowball. It
Yep.
starts to turn into other areas of your life. So now you're young and now like all these other things mentally and emotionally, the burnout becomes this big moment of what am I going to actually do with my career? Do I stick with the
Mm-hmm.
creative? Do I go with the business? I don't want my soul to die. I need to make money.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you
Yes.
land. And you're
That's
in
right.
that place. What
Yeah.
do you do?
Well, one night I was at a concert, an outdoor concert with my husband. And I remember lying on the grass looking at the sky. This was maybe August. So that moment I told about earlier was in January. So we're talking like 8 or 9 months later. And all of a sudden, I just turned over to him. And without even telling him what I was thinking about, I said, I think I might be done. And he looked at me, he goes, good.
Mm,
And it was that, as hard as it was, the actual moment of clarity was really simple. It was just allowing myself, and maybe because we were outside and it was summer and I was listening to live music and it was just different enough. And it was a moment in time that I was able to just think about what would it feel like to have made this decision to leave this thing that I wanted from the time I was 14, right? And what it felt like when I tried it on, kind of like a costume or a character, right? It was like for the previous couple of weeks, I'd been like, what if I just decided and didn't tell anybody and felt like what that felt like? And it felt spacious and it felt like a relief. And the it felt disappointing and sad, but it didn't feel like I was gonna never work again, or
mm,
something like that. It allowed me to breathe more easily, and that was enough. It was like I think I just kind of ran out the clock.
yeah.
um and so
This
yeah.
is, this is an interesting experience to have that some of our guests talk about. And I love this talking about what defines this turning point moment because there's just a certain knowing that happens and it's different for everybody. It sounds like for you, you just had the moment of clarity and it felt like space and you could feel it and it was
Mhm.
okay. And it sounds like this was a moment where this the book in this series was done. The book
Yeah.
had concluded.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
like this is the end, it's the last page, I'm going to close it. It doesn't feel like I'm done, right?
Hmm.
There's more parts to this, but this
Hmm.
part has ended. When you got to that expansive moment and you had that sense of knowing, what changed in you compared to where you were before?
Hmm. As I feel into that, I feel like the answer is that I felt my whole system slow down. I was just running so hard all the time.
Yeah.
And when I wasn't working, I was thinking about work, and I was waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning worrying about work. And it was just fast, felt stressful and fast, you know?
Yeah. And
And then when I made
please.
the decision, it was almost like I could slow down my breathing. Um, and I will say, like, because I didn't actually leave then until that was August. I didn't actually leave until the end of that year. So it
Mhm.
was months, 4.5 months more. And it was not a easy transition out. There was a lot of anger from my board and key stakeholders, and there was a lot I had to deal with. But it was really important that I had that inner knowing and had that super crystal clear clarity, especially when it came to my partner being so supportive and so clear also that that is what needed to happen. Even
Mm.
when I got all this pushback and this vitriol and all this nonsense that came from that decision, I was still really clear that it was the right decision. Yeah.
I love that. You're this, high performer and education and creativity, and as a director, as an artistic director, as an entrepreneur, you're doing all of these great things. At what point does motherhood come into play?
Well, I will share that during that time prior to me making the decision to leave, I had been pregnant and had a pregnancy loss. And
Oh.
yeah. And and I was working during the actual experience.
Oh gosh.
On a play actually about motherhood. So
Oh.
on one
Oh
hand, it was actually I had that because I was directing, again, I had a lot of people around me that were incredibly kind and supportive artists. So I had a little crew of love around me, but
thank
um
God.
I was in the hospital, and the next day I went back to work to open the show. And
No.
so, oh yeah, yeah, it was me, and then 2 days later, I made the decision to go to my monthly board meeting, and do my job.
The very
And
stressful job
yeah,
with angry people
with
and
angry people, and who didn't, who were not, who didn't actually know what their job was, and that's a whole other conversation. But that moment of having gone through that, and then immediately gone back to work, which is so many women's experience, by the way. Like, I am not alone in that experience.
Yep.
But I could have, because I was allowed to, I could have called in, quote unquote, called in sick to that meeting. I could have taken some time off. That was absolutely within my purview and my job title and everything else. And I didn't,
Mm.
because I believed that I needed to be at work all the time and carry the ship, right? And in reflecting and processing that experience, I was like, well, where is there space for a child in this structure? Where what if I do have a child, and I did eventually, as I already mentioned, uh where it's almost like spiritually that little being was like, you gotta make some changes first, please and thank you. Like, there ain't no space in this body for
Right.
me, or and not surprisingly, the month after I resigned, I became pregnant with my daughter, who is now 7.
Wow.
And um and so I was able to experience that full pregnancy, most of it out of that job, which was really, really important. And so what I did on paper is I went back to freelancing, and I did actually. I went back to directing and freelancing,
Sure.
but I realized that for me, and the sort of metabolic rate that I function at, and the high performance and the high achievement and the high quality of work that I want to do, I realized that I really needed to be in control of my own schedule.
Mm-hmm.
so that I could be high performing, high achieving, high output when it made sense for me and my family, and also not do that when it made sense for me and my family. Because I'm
Absolutely.
not somebody who's going to work less. I'm not going to work less high achieving. How do I say that?
Yeah.
Right?
You're
I'm
not going to
still
scale
always going
back.
to work at a
Yeah.
certain level.
You have certain
So I
standards for yourself, right?
yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
not going to do subpar work.
Right. So I need to just do like it on my own schedule and on my own terms so that I can be a little bit more available and attentive to the humans that surround me.
Okay. You said a lot of good stuff. One of the themes that I see a lot in talking to high performing women who are also mothers is before motherhood, um, there is this I will make it happen by my intellect, by my will, by my strength, by my force. And we do. We
Mm-hmm.
do really well. And for those of us who choose to become mothers and then are fortunate enough to become mothers,
Mm-hmm.
something shifts. For
Mm-hmm.
you started shifting um really while you were in that role with the
Mm-hmm.
loss of
Mm-hmm.
your first pregnancy. And then you had created the space that allowed you to really birth and be in that
Mm-hmm.
space.
Mm-hmm.
What did motherhood teach you about work and about being a high performer that you didn't know before?
I am not in control of anything.
And a nice little song. Let's
Yeah.
can we make a musical out of this now?
We
Because
can. I mean, when before we started recording, I shared with you that like this is day 4 of a snow and ice storm where I live, and my kid is downstairs watching Sesame Street because I'm doing this now, right? Normally, if I were in control, she would be at school. I would be in my, little happy podcast cave, and I'm just not in control. And I think I'm grateful for that lesson, as frustrating as it is to me all the time. I'm grateful that I continually am reminded of it because it is true both inside my house and out in the world.
yeah,
Um,
especially it's like being a mother, having children, you learn that you're not in control and you also learn your own limitations around qualities I believe are essential for high achievement, right? You learn your tolerance for your patience.
mhm.
You learn your own limitation as it relates to setting boundaries and what you will and won't tolerate, right?
Yes, yes.
How you speak to others, all of these things become highlighted. What are some of the things that you have learned in this journey now, having a daughter for 7 years and now freelancing and being in this great creative space with also the business that you couldn't have learned otherwise?
Hmm. Well, I think actually the thing that comes to me immediately is just that not everything is important, right?
Mm,
Let me put a different emphasis on that. Not everything is important, right?
right.
So I have learned, I think, to throw away stuff, be a little bit more easeful or in flow with ideas I have, or um, schedules I want to keep, or whatever it is. That's the control thing, but it's also that I used to think that absolutely everything I put out into the world had to be perfect, you know?
I do know.
And you do know, and as a director, I worked I mean, in the American theater and in the American arts in general, we have so little funding and so little support that our time, it's like we're making these things with extreme limits on time. So you're making decisions really quickly, you're working really intensely, and you're editing and trying, and then oh my god, the people are coming, or the scene is locked, and like that's it, it's got to be as good as it possibly can be. And I still believe all that stuff. I'm still incredibly thoughtful and careful about what I put out into the world, and I'm a lot more able to see that not absolutely everything has to be or can be the most excellent version of absolutely everything. Or if I have a conversation with a potential coaching client for public speaking and it doesn't click or they don't hire me, it's a lot I'm just able to be like, cool, then you'll go for you're somebody else's client and I'll find someone else. Like there's a lot more just kind of like things come in, things go out, that I think um part of that is just my time is not my own anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't have this illusion that I need to be all things to all people because there really
Yeah.
only needs to be like three things, me or all things to three people, maybe, or
Yeah.
even two, just myself and my kid. Really, my partner holds his own.
Yeah. I just think that it's an interesting journey for um, someone who muscles their way through very high achieving things and does really well at it and does really good things and creates a good life to then learn, oh, you're not in control.
Mm-hmm.
And the lessons that are in there, in my opinion, they're priceless. And I don't mean to say that like motherhood is the only way we can learn these
Right,
things
it's not.
because right, you can learn these through the loss of a loved one. I know I certainly did. My father passed away when I was um, I don't know, a few months pregnant. He was
Mm,
diagnosed. He was diagnosed and passed away in the time that I found out that I was pregnant.
oh my
And
goodness.
and death can also teach us these things about
Mm-hmm,
not being in control, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I don't know about you, but I think being an entrepreneur is such a blessing. I say blessing one because it is a calling.
mm-hmm,
A lot of marketers right now are telling everyone you have to be an entrepreneur, you have to be an entrepreneur. But that's actually not true. We need employees, right? We
yeah.
need technicians. We need people that are very
Mm-hmm,
skilled and are driven by the stability of an institution.
mm-hmm,
So to be an entrepreneur is almost like being a creative. It's a bit of a calling. And it's a blessing because I haven't found in my life, other than acting, anywhere where all of the lessons in my life are directly applicable to my journey
yeah, yeah, yeah.
than entrepreneurship,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yes.
So, all right, let's dive into it. It's time for the part of the show that I call matter of fact. And this part of the show, it's really special. It's where I ask our amazing guests like you to step into their moment of truth. And I want you to think of this as your personal spotlight. It's totally safe, right? I'm going to empower you to brag a little or a lot, literally, because I get it. Like, it's not always easy to toot your own horn, and especially for high impact driven women and creatives. But right here, right now, it's not just okay, it's celebrated. Okay. So tell us about all you've done. I want the hard numbers, the shiny awards, those big milestones. And this isn't just about patting yourself on the back. Understand this is about showing others what is also possible. Right.
Mhm, mhm.
And now I have only three rules for matter of fact. One, no disclaimers. Two, no shame. And number three, your kids and your family don't count. We know that they're your greatest accomplishment. Okay. So, Adriana, the stage is yours.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Well, I think that what comes up for me immediately is that I have a superhero skill that I think is what makes me really good at what I do, both as a public speaking coach and as a creative. And that is that I am really able to tap into what each individual person needs in terms of both the language that resonates with them, maybe the thing that they need to be talked to about to unlock a certain moment or a certain feeling, and that I have always been able to work from the inside out. So when I'm coaching somebody, I don't start with what do you look like? How do you stand? How do you hold a microphone? Where's your shiny light? I start from who are you? What do you want? What's going on for you internally? I always joke that I would have been a therapist if I wasn't a director, but it's kind of the same thing.
It's
um,
100% the same thing. Like that's what we
yeah.
always joke. Same thing about acting,
Yeah.
right? Free
Hmm.
therapy. Well,
Yeah.
expensive. But go ahead.
Expensive free therapy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So many of my accomplishments, um, I have in some ways, it's very strange because I'm really good at what I do and I've had a lot of success. So I've gone to top schools. I was
Like,
hired for this,
like
like
I want
Sarah Lauren.
give me
Okay.
the
I
specifics,
went to
girl.
Sarah Lawrence College. I went to Columbia University. It's the top directing program in the country. I was hired at 29 as an artistic director, which is extremely young. I won awards for directing and producing. Um,
Like, what are the awards that you won?
best director for of the, I won a best director award in San Francisco. I won a best new director in Portland award when I got here. I won a, best production and best season of the year award here as well for the work that I produced and presented. Um, I and I've had incredible success with the shows I've directed as well, and with my clients just kicking ass at what they do. And so often when I am the most successful, you actually don't know that I'm there or that I was there. Because unlike a lot of directors or coaches who kind of put their personality first, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's auteur directors who, you think of like Guillermo del Toro, right? Like highly stylized,
Yes.
extremely external first.
Mhm.
Style, design, concept, all of that. It's amazing. It's not what I do. What I do is I work with people. I go inside first. So a lot of times when my actors or clients are most successful, I don't get external recognition for that because they are doing the thing that makes them shine. And it's funny because I I got a podcast, I got coaching. I love being front and center when it comes to training and coaching. I love giving speeches, I love giving keynotes. I do all of that. I do that well. And I think that the thing um that makes me good at what I do is also a thing that's less recognized externally.
Mm.
Um, so you asked me to like toot my own horn. I would just say like I'm really good at what I do, and you may not even see it necessarily if you look at what I do, which actually makes me super good at what I do. I'm like a little secret back pocket ninja, like helping you with all of your
You
things.
literally took the words out of my mouth. Yeah, I think a great coach, no matter what the coaching is about, should empower the person from the
Mm-hmm.
inside out.
Yeah.
Uh, as a coach, I share the sentiment. It's really about what they believe their own said desire is and holding them to that standard, supporting them to grow into who they need to become to achieve that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with what you do, it really is personal. To find
Mm-hmm.
your authentic voice, you
Mm-hmm.
you really have to know yourself. And I love how you've married the two things. When I was in the transition from full-time actor to full-time entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
well, I wasn't a full-time actor, but in my mind, I was full-time actor, right? You know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
I sure do.
I called it the double helix of purpose.
Mm.
I'm a creative and I have to create and I want to create and it fills my soul. And yet I have to be entrepreneurial because this is also feeding my soul in a different way. And
Mm-hmm.
when you combine those two together, that's when you get life coaches, right?
Yeah, 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 that's
And
right.
then speaking coaches and acting coaches. And now for me, at least, it's evolved into something so much bigger, where I take a little bit of all of that and combine it to help people
Mm-hmm.
make the freedom and the impact that they want through entrepreneurship. I love what you're sharing. And before we sort of tie things up, I have a couple final questions. The first thing I want to know is it's the end of your life. We're going to do a coffin speech. No, we're not going to do that. It's an acting joke for the listeners who don't aren't familiar with it. It's the end. What do you hope set your soul on fire that you're going to be remembering or remembered for in that moment?
Mm. I think my life's work actually is, in a way, practicing what I preach, because I hope that I not only am able to help other people speak their authentic truth and show up as who they are, but I also want to do that myself. I think it's like the whole purpose of my existence on the planet is to help people and myself be fully who we are and step into a 360-degree balanced human being self.
Mm, yeah.
I have great ambition financially. I have great ambition for my impact, but most of that is towards um, a goal of balance, a goal of being really present in all parts of my life. So I think if I'm
Yeah.
looking, I'm on the end of it and I'm looking back, if I can say I was really there in that room when I was creating, I was really there with my friends in those late night hangout on the couch sessions. I was really there for my family, and I was really there for myself, present, grounded, here, fully embodied. And that's still something, I mean, I'm 41. That's something I'm very much working on now. I think
Yeah.
to integrate all of these things. So, and I actually think that by making money and by expanding my business, I'm able to have a greater impact that's then able to feed back to me to have more balance, to
Yes.
be able to give more money away, to be able to exercise and eat well, to do all the things that then
Right.
allow me to do more of what I'm able to do to make more of an impact. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
That's beautiful. I love the power of presence and wanting to be present in all of the moments. Right? Because in the end,
Mm-hmm.
when it's over, they're going to have those moments, and that's what's going to live with other people.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And I love how it integrates into what you do.
Mm.
Before we go, somebody is looking to connect with you. Number one, who would you love to hear from? And number two, how can they find you?
Great. Yes. So I work one-on-one with people, um, and I work with teams. So my one-on-one work, I'm looking to connect with people who are generally entrepreneurs or business leaders, or people who are ready to get to the next space. I'm really good with people in transition or who are moving to that next level. So they're running for public office, or they want to get into that C-suite, or they're moving their business maybe from solopreneurship to the next phase. In terms of teams, I love working with groups of people, coming in and doing a half day team training, helping people communicate with each other better or communicate the message of their business out into the world. And how you can find me. So, my umbrella for all of my work is called Claim Center Stage. And so you can go to claimcenterstage.com, and that has free resources, all of my contact information, more about the trainings and the online courses that we've got. Or if you're a LinkedIn person, I'm on LinkedIn at Adriana Baer.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
The closing question we use on this podcast should come as no surprise to you. You have this big life. You've done truly remarkable things, and you continue to do remarkable work while being a mother and a wife and a sister and all that great stuff. So the final question is, how do you do it?
A lot of coffee, a lot of sleep, a lot of sleep, a lot of balance. It's just balance again. I can't do any of what I do well if I'm out of whack physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, etc. So And I'm not somebody who says you've got to do all the things all the time. You have to eat well and exercise every day, blah, blah, blah,
Because
blah, blah, blah.
everything isn't important.
That's right.
You said
That's
that.
right. I did. But I noticed that like over the course of a week or a month, I really got to eat food that makes me feel good. I got to move my body in some way. I got to spend some time with my friends. I got to spend some time by myself. I got to sleep. And I got to
Yeah.
pay attention.
Yeah.
Right. So that's it.
That's great. That's very sound advice,
No magical
truly.
systems, sadly. As much of a Virgo as I am, and I am. It's not magical systems that actually work for me.
Yeah, it's good old fashioned self-care, right?
That's right. That's right.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing from such a vulnerable place. Your story, I'm sure, is going to inspire and uplift a lot of people. So thanks for being on the show,
This was
Adriana.
so delightful. Thank you for having me.
Truly my pleasure.